Hello and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I'm Hira Mustafa and these are the headlines. At least 6 people died and 120 injured after a 7.0 magnitude earthquake struck in the Aegean Sea near Turkey. The quake caused several buildings to collapse in the Turkish city of Izmir. Tremors were felt as far away as Istanbul and Greece. Tens of thousands of Muslims took to the streets in several countries to protest the republication of blasphemous caricatures in France. From Somalia to Pakistan and Palestine to Indonesia, thousands of faithful called for a boycott of French products. The widespread protests coincide with the birth anniversary of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Pakistan's Foreign Office has summoned a senior Indian diplomat to lodge a protest over ceasefire violations along the line of control. Foreign Office spokesperson Zahid Hafiz Chaudhry says 2 civilians were wounded in unprovoked firing in Nezapir and Rakh Chakri sectors. He said Indian occupation forces have committed 2,580 ceasefire violations and killed 19 civilians this year. Well, these were the headlines. News in detail coming after the short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back, and now the news in detail. In Turkey, at least 6 people died with 120 others injured after a 7.0 magnitude earthquake struck the Aegean Sea near Turkey. The quake caused a sea surge and several buildings to collapse in the Turkish city of Izmir. Tremors were felt as far away as Istanbul and Greece. Izmir governor said 70 people have been rescued from the debris so far. In a tweet, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan said he was ready to help with all available means. Pakistan and Greece have expressed grief over the loss of lives. Tens of thousands of Muslims took to the streets in several countries to protest the republication of blasphemous caricatures in France. From Somalia to Pakistan and Palestine to Indonesia, thousands of faithful called for a boycott of French products. The widespread protests coincide with the birth anniversary of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. More in the following report.
The rise in Islamophobia in the West, particularly in France, has sent shockwaves across the Muslim world. The issue surfaced earlier this month when France's President Emmanuel Macron described Islam as a religion in crisis and defended the republication of blasphemous caricatures by a satirical magazine in Paris. This follows the beheading of a teacher in France after he showed blasphemous cartoons to his pupils. Macron honored the teacher and pledged to introduce measures that largely target Muslims. His statement drew widespread criticism from the Muslim world, with Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Iran, and Bangladesh condemning the offensive caricatures and attempts to link Islam with terrorism. Today, tens of thousands of Muslims are rallied in several states against Macron's remarks and acts of blasphemy in France. They held Macron responsible for chaos and violence that took place in France following his anti-Islam statements. France has Western Europe's largest Muslim population, and some accuse the authorities of using secularism to target them. Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan had warned that Islamophobia is giving rise to radicalization and increasing space for extremists on all sides. He called on Muslim leaders to sensitize the larger world to basic principles of Islam, guided by peace and tolerance.
And now moving on, Pakistan's Foreign Office has summoned a senior Indian diplomat to protest ceasefire violations along the line of control. The summoning comes a day after 2 people were wounded in unprovoked Indian firing in Nezabin and Rakhchikri sectors. Foreign Office spokesman Zahid Hafiz Chaudhry said ceasefire violations are posing a threat to regional peace and stability. He urged India to respect the 2003 ceasefire agreement. 19 people have been martyred in over 2,500 ceasefire violations by India this year so far. The Human Rights Watch has endorsed Azerbaijan's statement that Armenian forces used banned cluster bombs in an attack on Bada city. At least 21 civilians were killed and 70 others injured in the attack on October 28th. The watchdog said it analyzed photos of cluster munition remains taken by international and local journalists at and near the attack scene. It concluded that Armenian forces either carried out the attack or supplied the munitions to Nagorno-Karabakh forces. The Human Rights Watch urged Yerevan to stop using cluster bombs in the ongoing conflict over the Nagorno-Karabakh region. Over 900 people have been killed in the ongoing clashes since clashes began on the 27th of September. The Trump administration has informally notified Congress of its plan to sell F-35 jets to the United Arab Emirates. House Committee on Foreign Affairs Chair Eliot Engel has objected to the proposal, saying it will affect Israel's military edge in the region. In a statement, Engel said the transfer of these weapons to one Middle Eastern state will generate demands from others in the region. He added this technology must be protected from U.S. adversaries like Russia and China, who are active in the Gulf. He questioned if it was wise to pay a price for Arab-Israel normalization with the infusion of advanced weapons. Earlier, Israel withdrew its objections against the planned F-35 sale to UAE after securing guarantees. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has wrapped up the 5-nation tour of Asia and Vietnam with a call for unity to counter China's influence. Pompeo visited Hanoi, presumably to celebrate 25 years of U.S.-Vietnam relations. But during his previous stops in India, Sri Lanka, the Maldives and Indonesia, Pompeo's main aim was to shore up support for pushing back on China. He said Washington looks forward to building mutual ties and to make the region peaceful and prosperous. China has already warned Pompeo against sowing discord among Asian countries. Chinese and U.S. military chiefs have held talks on crisis communication this week amid tensions in the South China Sea. Beijing's Defense Ministry spokesman Wu Qian said Washington denied reports of a possible drone attack. He also quoted U.S. Defense Secretary Mark Esper as saying that Washington has no intention of creating a military crisis with Beijing. The spokesman said both militaries will further exchange views on maritime security before the end of the year. The recent exchange came as Esper toured Asia with Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. During the tour, both officials urged countries to cooperate with the U.S. to confront what they call security threats posed by China. However, Beijing has criticized Washington's position as a Cold War mentality. The U.S. has imposed sanctions on 8 entities over sale and purchase of Iranian petrochemical products. The Treasury Department said Iran uses the petroleum sector to fund destabilizing activities across the Middle East. It said the entities based in Iran, China and Singapore engaged in transactions facilitated by Iranian firms. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin said the U.S. will target any revenue source that Tehran uses to fund terrorist groups. The latest sanctions come less than a week before the U.S. presidential election on November 3rd. The global number of COVID-19 cases has crossed 45 million mark with over 1.18 million deaths. This comes as the U.S. reported record daily cases and more than 87,000 people testing positive overnight. Meanwhile, India has recorded more than 48,000 infections overnight, taking the caseload to over 8 million. More in the following report.
In a complete reversal of recovery, the coronavirus is tormenting nations beyond hope as cases surge. A recently traced variant of the virus originating in Spain is being considered responsible for the devastating second wave in Europe. To fight the virus, European Union leaders have agreed to increase coordination on testing and vaccination strategies.
Numbers of cases are rising. Numbers of hospitalizations are rising. numbers of death are rising not as fast, fortunately, because we understand better today how to treat COVID patients and how to deal with the disease. But the spread of the virus will overwhelm our healthcare systems if we do not act urgently.
The number of confirmed cases in the United States is approaching the 9 million mark, with over 228,000 deaths. But President Donald Trump has ruled out any possibility of reimposing a nationwide lockdown. Mexico has the fourth highest COVID-19 death rate in the world, with its number of infections nearing 1 million. Lockdown restrictions have forced Mexicans to observe their traditional Day of the Dead earlier than the marked date.
Different. It is going to be different because in my house we always go out, dress up and go to parties. And now it is not going to be possible, but it is temporary. Let's hope that next year it can be done. The only thing we can do is wait for the pandemic to end, for it to be over.
Over in Asia, India remains the virus hotspot. 563 more people have died in India overnight, pushing the count to over 121,000. Mainland China reported 25 new COVID-19 cases, down from 47 a day earlier. Japan has eased travel curbs for China, Australia, South Korea, and 6 other countries and regions as Tokyo steps up efforts to revive its economy.
And in Pakistan, over 1,000 people have tested positive for COVID-19 overnight. The virus has claimed 20 lives in the last day, pushing the death toll to 6,795. The health ministry says there were 11,800 active coronavirus cases in the country. It said out of over 332,000 countrywide cases, more than 313,000 have recovered so far. Officials added over 140,000 cases have been detected in the Sindh province, while Punjab has reported more than 103,000 cases. In the capital city Islamabad, some 19,500 people have been infected so far. Pakistan's envoy to the UN says new technologies are crucial in the fight against COVID-19 and climate change. Speaking at a virtual dialogue on technological and science-based solutions to the COVID-19 challenge, Munir Akram said it is technology that enabled the world to communicate in this crucial period of the pandemic. Akram stressed on the need for sharing scientific research university so no state is left behind. He suggested the UN Commission on Science should align intellectual property with sustainable development goals. The envoy added digital cooperation should be the goal of the UN in order to remove gaps. In the United States, President Donald Trump and his Democratic rival Joe Biden will hold campaigns across Midwest states ahead of the final weekend before the election day. Joe Biden is so far leading President Donald Trump in the national polls for the presidential election scheduled for the 3rd of November. Earlier, both candidates showcased their contrasting approaches to the pandemic as they rallied supporters in the swing state of Florida. Florida is a must-win for Trump, and a key opinion poll average shows him just 1.4 behind Biden. Over 81 million people have already voted, setting the U.S. on course for its highest electoral turnout rate in more than a century. India is fast losing its status as a democracy due to the crippling crackdown on media and civil society. In a report, a Sweden-based research institute said India is one of the largest countries verging towards autocracy. The institute said press freedom in India is declining with increased slapping of sedition and defamation charges on journalists. Several international bodies have urged the Indian government to stop using sedition laws to silence media. Meanwhile, Amnesty International has asked the Indian government to immediately halt its suppression of dissent in occupied Kashmir. And now moving on, the UN has proposed a plan to gradually withdraw the 18,000-strong peacekeeping force from Congo. This comes day after militants killed 19 people and burned down 40 houses and a church in the country's troubled eastern region. In a letter to the Security Council, UN Chief Antonio Guterres presented a timeline to transfer powers to the Congolese government. He said the peacekeeping mission and the Congolese government agreed on the broad strategy on October 19th. The UN chief said both sides will continue a dialogue to create conditions for a successful and responsible exit of the mission. The UN says at least 140 Europe-bound migrants have drowned off the coast of Senegal after their boat capsized. In a statement, the UN Migration Agency said it was the deadliest shipwreck recorded this year. The International Organization for Migration said the boat carrying 200 people sank after leaving the town of Mabor. It said the Senegalese and Spanish navies rescued some 60 people. The agency said migrant arrivals in the Canary Islands from West Africa have quadrupled this year. The surge has happened as other routes through Libya or Algeria are blocked off by tougher controls. New Zealand has voted to legalize the use of euthanasia but is on course to reject the recreational use of cannabis. The vote makes it the 7th country in the world to legalize assisted dying. People voted on the 2 referendums this month while casting ballots during a general election. Re-elected Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern backed both the bills in her campaign. The Electoral Commission says preliminary results show over 65% of voters were in favor of the end-of-life choice bill. But when it came to the question of legalizing marijuana, the Commission said 53.1% opposed it. In Australia, a bushfire inquiry has called for a national body to respond to natural disasters, calling the outlook alarming. A royal commission examined the Black Summer bushfires of 2019-20, which ravaged vast swaths of the nation, and other disasters. In a report, the commission warned Australia is facing an increased frequency of natural disasters because of climate change. The report made more than 80 recommendations to the government. They included detailed proposals to improve national response efforts, tools, and climate data. The Australian government said it will carefully and methodically consider the proposals. Wildfires destroyed over 24 million hectares, killed 33 people, and billions of animals from September 2019 to March. In the U.S., the death toll from Hurricane Zeta has risen to 6 after a storm slammed into the Gulf Coast and moved northeast. A 55-year-old man died in New Orleans after electrocution by a downed power line. This was followed by 4 deaths in Alabama and Georgia from trees crashing down on homes. A 58-year-old man in Mississippi drowned when he was trapped in rising seawater. More than 2 million people were left without power in the southeast of the country. Hurricane Zeta is the 5th named storm to strike Louisiana this year and a 27th named storm this season. In New York, strong winds caused a crane to spin, making debris fall from a skyscraper in Manhattan. New York Fire Department says there is still some debris precariously hanging from the building. In a statement, the FDNY said no one was injured in the incident. It said rescuers found a tower crane with a cable hanging from the boom that was a little lower than it should have been. It said the crane was secured, but it added the operation to clear the debris is going to be a long one due to the wind and fog conditions. South Korean officials have released videos warning residents about virus resurgence ahead of the Halloween weekend. More in the following report.
Halloween this year should have been ripe with possibilities, but unfortunately, the holiday is happening in the midst of a pandemic. In a bid to contain COVID-19 transmission, officials in South Korea's capital city of Seoul are warning citizens with creative posters and videos. They have advised people to host Halloween parties online.
Seoul City, along with Justice Ministry, National Police Agency, and Ministry of Food and Drug Safety will expand the joint inspection team into 24 groups with 140 officials and will intensively check dancing clubs today and tomorrow.
Don't end up a real ghost while enjoying Halloween, reads the caption on one poster in Seoul. Another warned this year's party could really turn scary. Some 14 nightclubs have already been shut after failing to adhere to social distancing guidelines.
The city plans to reap immediate results from infectious disease prevention measures by ordering a 2-week ban on gatherings for the facilities that violate the guidelines from the next day.
South Korea has been praised for quick recovery and effective action against the COVID-19 pandemic, but it saw a resurgence in cases in May after an outbreak linked to nightclubs and bars in Seoul.
And now it's time to take a short break. Stay tuned. And in Brazil, a theatre has opened a new outdoor space for drama lovers to attend productions despite the coronavirus pandemic. More in the following report.
In the car park of the Arthur Azevedo Theatre, spectators sit in small plastic cabins to watch the play Bulletin Protocol by Bendita Troupe. Protocol is the first live performance to open with an audience in Sao Paulo since the COVID-19 outbreak.
I am loving it. I was feeling an abstinence from art, music, everything. And when the theatre returned together with the museums, which we have now reopened, this is incredible.
Even though the City Hall allowed all theatres to reopen earlier this month, less than 10 did so. The actors wear face masks and do not touch each other, interrupting their movements in the air just before touching their fellow actors.
We are here not exactly proving anything, but showing a prototype, an example that it is possible to do theatre before the vaccine arrives, with all the safety protocols so that public feels safe and can access the theatre.
The production is an adaptation of the 17th century play Bulletin, written by British playwright Ben Jonson, a contemporary of Shakespeare. Troupe's version refers to the new coronavirus pandemic.
A Belgian chocolatier has been crowned the world's best pastry chef by a jury of independent reporters. This has enhanced Belgium's reputation as a producer of top-class chocolate. More in the following report.
Pierre Marcolini, who has opened boutiques from Germany to China, won the award for Best Chocolatier in a competition organized by world pastry stars. Known for his minimalist style, Marcolini's chocolates have become luxury gifts, with some boxes selling for more than €100. Marcolini says he hopes chocolate could comfort people during the coronavirus pandemic.
We are obviously in a gloomy period where people are confused due to complicated future prospects, hardships, and difficult communication. Therefore, I think the best thing you can do is end up at home with a bar of chocolate, a box of pralines, and a box of chocolates. It is comforting, it gives pleasure, and it brings happiness.
Le côté réconfortant.
Jury of the world pastry stars said the prize also took into account his commitment to the responsible sourcing of cocoa beans from Cuba, Ecuador, Venezuela, Madagascar, Cameroon, and Vietnam.
From the start, and this is the little secret, Belgian chocolatiers crushed the beans to less than 25 micrometers, which allowed them to have a much finer, smoother, much more refined chocolate than the one that you could find in Europe. Even today, we still have this reputation of having chocolates with a certain delicacy and a certain aromatic note.
Belgium boasts more than 200 chocolate firms, over 2,000 chocolate stores and museums, and workshops such as the Brussels Museum of Cocoa and Chocolate.
The Wall Street stocks have dropped following a slide in the shares of tech-heavy heights after their quarterly results. The shares of Apple tumbled about 6% after recording the steepest drop in quarterly iPhone sales in 2 years. The Amazon stocks fell 4% after it forecast a jump in costs related to coronavirus, while Facebook also shed 3.5%. All the major bourses went down the drain. Meanwhile, oil prices dropped nearly 1%, extending losses amid growing concerns over the rise in COVID-19 cases. Most European markets are trading lower as tightening coronavirus restrictions weigh on investor sentiment. The Pan-European Stock 600 has slipped fractionally, with retail stocks shedding nearly 1%. London's FTSE and Frankfurt's DAX slipped close to 0.5%. The FTSE MIB in Italy shed nearly 0.5%, while the CAC 40 in Paris gained marginally earlier. Asian markets declined over the global rise of COVID-19 and unlikelihood of a vaccine soon. Now it's time to have a look at the weather update across the globe. And for the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at indus.news.